Hey guys, and welcome back to Rage Gaming. In just 2 days, we're going to be jumping into Dragons Dogma 2, and so in prep for that, you need to have decided your vocation, the class you're going to play, or possibly which vocations you're going to swap between, because there's going to be great benefit to that. Over the last week, I've been doing a lot of research for the vocations, and I've already played a couple of them at a Capcom event. I've made a series of videos going as deep as we could into the details of each vocation. This video aims to be short to the point for all of them, for everything that I've learned, and answer that question, which vocation or vocations are for you. To get us started though, you do need to understand two main concepts. There are two main stats and there are augments. The main stats are strength and magic, and augments are basically powerful passives. As you play, you'll be leveling two things: your character's main level and your vocation level that you're currently playing. The vocation you're currently playing will actually affect what stats you're going to be prioritizing on each level up. Strength is basically physical damage, and magic as well, magic damage. So by leveling a warrior, your character will prioritize strength most of all per level up, versus say a mage and sorcerer being magic. It means essentially that leveling a mage and swapping to sorcerer is a very logical good thing to do, since both focus magic. But if you were to level a fighter and then swap to sorcerer, it would leave you with some awkward stats, at least early. In DD2, it does appear they put a system in place to help bounce those stats around to be kinder than say the original, allowing for these kind of swaps to not be overly punishing, but it should still matter, at least mainly in the early levels, where you want to be aware of that. You'll likely be fine after playing for a while and get the stats kind of more balanced out. Augments are those passives though, and they're pretty powerful ones at that. By leveling a vocation, you'll get access to more and more augments from that vocation. You'll have 6 total slots for augments, whatever vocation you're currently playing, and I'm pretty damn sure you're going to get 5 augments per vocation. So at very least, you want to play one more vocation than the one you're maining just to fill that 6th slot, even if you were only to play it a little. Now with that explained, let's talk about each vocation and why you might consider it. Kicking things off, of course, with the starting options, the starting vocations. First up though, we have the Thief, which is the vocation I'm most interested in playing to open the game with. It's a hyper mobile melee fighter, leaving itself with very few ranged options in exchange for incredible speed, both of attack and movement, to fly around an enemy at pretty much lightning pace. This is largely tied to its simple core evasive move, Swift Step, which allows you to dash at short range. You can do that mid-fight, mid-combo many times to continuously reposition and evade attacks. Its melee focus though is using 2 daggers at once, which land in these huge combos, piercing stabs. The fast hitting combo of Carve will allow for high DPS, especially when buffed up with say elemental damage from your own toolset or from an ally, where the heavy stabs called Twin Fangs allow for execution style kills. Enemies stunned or fallen down, you can critically hit them for a big burst of damage with that, or you can dig into them say during a climb for a reliable hold, or pin foes down, leaving them exposed in another way. Then with its base mobility, the Thief can bounce off walls to reach up higher and benefit in general traversal, stealth techniques to hide or effectively steal from foes mid-fight, or tear up a target directly with the classic spinning Beyblade attack, the Helm Splitter. Between its hyperspeed, climbing mobility, high DPS through consistent attacks, and various tools to enhance that damage, it is very versatile. So in the hands of a good player, I think the Thief is going to be able to punish enemy weak points to extreme effect, ridiculous DPS. As a physical focused vocation, you should expect strength to be the main stat, while for augments, we know that it can decrease the chance enemies target you, gain a lifesteal effect via killing blows, reduce stamina consumption during clings or even pins, and most importantly, augment your strength to push that stat as high as possible. That might be one of the most important augments to unlock if you're going for a physical focused vocation. Overall, I expect the Thief to be easy to play thanks to its simple evade in Swift Step, letting you avoid incoming damage at the drop of a hat so you don't get punished for going hard, while its DPS potential is massive if the player knows how to target the weak points with that DPS. Next up, we have the other new vocation, the Archer. This replaces the Strider and Ranger of the original. This is a very mobile archer though, one of my favourite versions I've seen in any game. Its main weapon is obviously the bow and arrow, but it absolutely can and will fire up close if it needs to, thanks to its simple ability to fire off shots without aiming. You auto aim at targets while firing arrows while moving, meaning you could do a slide shot, an aerial shot, a retreating kick off a foe while you fly backwards and shoot at them again. Now having said that, the Archer obviously has incredible strength at range. You can aim in with R1 to really pick your targets. It allows for easy headshotting of foes or aiming at weak locations without the worry of climbing up there yourself. Using various techniques, you can fire off streams of arrows, fire them in a cone for AoE, use dire shots for more intense blasts to send enemies flying, or enhance damage by using special arrows, such as explosive arrows for AoE, water ones to drench maybe fiery foes, or types of damage over time in the form of poison. Through the Archer's surprising mobility though, you can apply pressure up close, or escape pressure, all while continually firing. Archers have big impact on the party though, able to bring down ranged enemies that the party can't reach normally, stagger foes by pressuring them at the right time in the right place, or just aim for weak spots like the head or heart. It might prove to be more difficult of a starting vocation though, just because of the aiming and fast movement you're going to need to manage at the same time. I do think the augments seem really impactful. Increased max stamina is huge, faster scaling of foes and cliffs, even increased damage to say a target's vitals. That seems an incredible one to get for every vocation. We do expect the archer to be more of a physical focused vocation and therefore logically lean into the strength stat, but in any case, this flashy version of a ranger seems incredible and would be a good thing to have in the party, even as a pawn if not yourself. Moving on though, I have our first magic type of this video, the Mage. This new version of the Mage has a lot of exciting promise though. Where Mage felt a bit overshadowed by the Sorcerer in the first game, this Mage is much more supportive, redesigned to lean into that concept. You still have lots of offensive options, but it's the utility based spells where it really shines. Because of that, in my opinion, this new version of Mage is an auto include in a party, whether it's you or a pawn. It should be incredible. Now, casting spells is as simple as charging a spell and letting it loose when it's ready, ideally when fully charged. And while you have classic elemental spells like Frost, Lightning, and Fire, you won't have the higher versions you'd expect to see as a sorcerer with that DPS focus in mind. Simply having the ability to provide element damage to punish the element weakness of whatever you're dealing with is a big deal. More so, the Mage can now cast an AoE heal as its heavy attack button, a core skill. That means they can now always heal the party. Then you've got the insanely good weapon boons, which will enhance your party's weapons with Frost, Fire, or Lightning for a time. And you could help the team in a different way, like cleansing debuffs, or providing a haste buff to make them faster and attack faster too. It's actually quite hard to justify missing out on something like that in your party. Now obviously as a mage, its main stat will be magic, and its augments should be helpful for any vocation leaning into that. You've got increased magic defense, increased recovery for both normal curatives and magic ones, shorten the debuff timers on your team, longer enhancements, and even better stamina recovery, which will be huge for every vocation in the game. So the DD2's Mage is just the ultimate support and should be very straightforward and fun to play. But last for the starting vocations, we have the Fighter, the classic sword and shield user, although they can actually use a variety of one-hand weapons in this game. The idea is to draw attention to yourself though and counter everything thrown at you. The standard blocking with your shield will work as a reliable way to stop damage, but a fighter can time that to parry instead, countering attacks entirely and importantly, leaving enemies exposed. That can even be done against large foes, meaning a good player will have enemies reeling constantly even through a big boss. Fighters don't just take the heat though, they also control a fight. Through their very forceful attacks, with say a shield bash, you can knock targets to the ground or cause even big enemies to start to reel. They can use the classic blink strike to rush straight to a target for a nasty thrust. That can prevent backliners like spellcasters from doing what they want. Or they can very directly help their allies by using their shield to launch them, sending an ally up at a, say, Cyclops' weak point, or just get to an awkward location. So while a fighter classically takes the attention, it shouldn't be understated how impactful they are just in a fight. Their offensive options are good too. They have the simple ability to leap up and slash up to reach aerial foes or higher up enemies, spin attacks to AoE, continual combos where they two-hand the weapon for even more damage. A good fighter then is going to remove the pressure from the team so that they can happily cast for DPS and create consistent windows of opportunity by bringing down the big enemies. Naturally, they are a physical focus vocation though, so strength is going to be their main stat and their augments will be defense related to increase physical defense, improve recovery when downed, and even extra carry weight, which is nice for everyone. So yeah, I think the fighter is going to be one of the more easy vocations to play at a base level, but extremely impactful when it's played by someone who can say parry consistently, which is much higher of a skill requirement, leading to really good fight control. Okay, so speaking of warrior, let's now move on to the two advanced vocations, which are unlocked after the opening of the game, probably not too far in. Starting with the warrior, a two-handed weapon user, be that greatsword or warhammer. These are much slower weapons, but are going to deal much more damage per hit, and they can even be charged to send out an even heavier hit if you're able to time that well. At the same time, they can bowl through enemy attacks by barging with a shoulder or even countering. Warrior is about going toe-to-toe with the enemy and breaking through their guard. You've got your light and heavy attacks. Lights are these horizontal swings and sweeps, where the heavy is more of a slam or stab down. These can be charged to enhance the damage and potential stagger, but yet good timing and execution is required. If you want to just tap them out, send them out faster, they'll be weaker hits, but you can speed that up. Like with the light attack Mighty Sweep, follow that up with another sweep right as the current one lands, it increases the speed of the follow-up, and you can continuously do that. Where the heavy is going to be more about punishing foes, knock down with critical hits, or leaping and plunging on them, and your barge ability is going to be a core found on R1, which can shove enemies down, or stagger them if well timed. We were expecting Warrior to have a long list of weapon skills though. We've seen a lot of different examples, whether leaping up and swinging for greater reach, or a hefty cleave to smash multiple enemies at once, a command grab style penetrate and slam. There's a taunt style roar, forcing the attention to the warrior, and we see other examples of weapon skills that seem to deal out bigger hits but with longer charge times. They should have some utility options to help them survive and take the hits they're going to be taking, because the warrior will require good confidence to time its attacks well. To counter blows, warriors will need to be played by someone who can manage the pressure of the monster's attention while being one of the bigger hitters. That makes it more of a difficult vocation to play, but in exchange you get to boast some of the heaviest hits in the entire game and absolute domination of even massive enemies. Obviously its main stat will be strength, and for augments we know it has vitality for an increase to max life, and passives that lend itself to breaking guards, knocking foes down, and importantly reducing the loss of max health when you take a hit in general. That's another great perk for every vocation. Next up, our next and last advanced vocation is Sorcerer, the true offensive caster of Dragons Dogma. Where the Mage is largely about support and utility, the Sorcerer doesn't care about that, it's just focused on damage by using massive spectacle spells like the ice storms and tornadoes and the literal meteor strikes. Just like the Mage, you'll cast a spell and charge it up and then let it fly, ideally when it's fully charged. And you can use Quick Spell as a core ability to spend more stamina to get a spell out quicker. That'll naturally require stamina management, main limiter of this type of gameplay. However, the Sorcerer, unlike the Mage, has Galvanize as its core skill on the heavy slot. By holding it, you recover stamina quickly, even faster when standing still. This creates an all-in playstyle for Sorcerer, letting you go crazy with those intense spells, giving you a way to recover stamina quicker rather than being stuck with none at the end. But what can you actually do with that potent power? Well, you can create massive ice pillars to freeze foes and even create physical platforms. For frost, you could also instead use a blizzard to spread frostbite in AoE, or yet the wind one with a full-on tornado that, like the original, will send enemies flying up into the sky. For other elements, you could create a huge ball of lightning that persists, zapping nearby enemies with very potent effect, or for fire, create a cone of fire that lasts for a while on the ground, or yet the meteor call to strike down. Alongside other options like the Mage also has, like channeling flamethrowers, smaller lightning zaps, the ability to levitate and move around like that. So I think this is going to appeal to many who just like cool magic, want to focus on DPS instead. The difficulty of the vocation will be more about managing the stamina, so you're never really exhausting yourself at the wrong time, and maximizing the damage potential with well-timed, expensive charge spells that need to be the right element against the right enemy. Naturally, its main stat will be magic, and the augments will be tied to that, increasing your raw magic stat, increased element weakness exploit, and debuffs that are more likely to trigger, such as burning a target. Overall, just like Warrior, I think the damage potential in one hit is going to be colossal for this vocation. This then brings us to the first of the 4 hybrid vocations, which importantly cannot be used by pawns. They are arisen only. We'll start with a really unique Trickster, the only vocation that doesn't directly attack the enemies. By spreading smoke and clouds, the Trickster creates illusions, and not just of themselves, but also, say, terrain stuff like false floors and walls, causing enemies to walk off cliffs or find an area impassable. They can also create huge illusions like false creatures to terrify even huge monsters, like knocking a griffin out of flight. Further, the Trickster also seems to be able to buff and support the allies, so it's a very unique and effective playstyle. The unique weapon it uses is called the Censer, which is what's creating all the fumes they use for the illusions. Light attack will generate some of those fumes, and a heavy attack can create the clones of yourself, which you can reposition by invoking the essence. This repositioning can cause enemies to, say, leap off edges, or attack each other with the huge attacks meant for you. In the attempt of doing these things, you'll want the attention to be on you, so the Trickster does have a taunt effect to draw their attention and then start manipulating them. Now, for greater control, we have seen examples of a type of projection of yourself, allowing for camera-controlled movement of an illusion. Using that, you can scout an area, or just draw enemies into the right spot beforehand. Overall, the Trickster is definitely going to be very impactful in a fight, but that impact's limited by the player's creativity using these powers. With how potent gravity as a weapon is though, you can definitely kill entire packs of enemies instantly with no threat to you or the party. But only if you identify the right ways to trick enemies or attack one another by creating these false illusions. So yes, very unique in design, but it might be a bit like Marmite to many. Great for a creative player, but not so much for one that just doesn't know how to use it. So I think this is going to be one of the harder vocations, but great when used well. In any case, it's magic focused as you likely expected, and while we don't know a lot about its augment options, we do know of detection. This alerts you to seeker tokens and wakestone shards with some sounds and visuals if you're near one. These are basically collectibles that are going to serve an important role in trade or for reviving yourself or even NPCs. Very valuable and normally hard to find. So, playing Trickster just for that augment could be worth it. Moving on, let's now talk about what appears to be the most popular new vocation of DD2, that's the Mystic Spearhand. Like a medieval RPG version of a Jedi, using both physical and magic damage attacks. Further, the magic power of this vocation is like the Force. You're able to lift heavy objects and throw them, or even corpses. Fire bolts of energy to stun or snare, instantly teleport to. Of course, there's two sides to it though, starting with the spear. You've got light and heavy attacks that can deal a lot of damage. The light attack combo has you twirling the spear in an arc. You can infinitely do that until you run out of stamina for a great sustained DPS, where the heavy combo is the one that gives you ranged magic arcs, meaning ranged enemies is not a problem for you. Different weapon skills also provide a bit of mobility and weapon damage too, like the dash forward and stab, which is like a short range teleport, or the leap upwards and then plunge down, which can also be used to evade at the same time. So the weapon power is very good, but it's the magic that enhances it all. This magic can come in the form of, say, different bolt types. Charge up and zap a target from range for, say, a stun or even a snare. If you trigger it as it contacts, it bursts out in stronger effect, like a stronger stun or AoE snare. Whereas if you press jump as that bolt contacts, you instantly teleport to the target, specifically where the bolt hit. This means you can aim it to land where you want on an enemy. But also using that magic, you can pick up and throw objects, send foes flying into space, instantly killing weak enemies, create shields for yourself and nearby allies to reduce damage taken. You could also steal stamina from foes by draining it. There's also a kind of ultimate looking ability where you generate a second version of yourself using magic. That's a huge DPS increase. So yes, overall the Magic Spearhand has an option for every situation and is definitely one of the most versatile vocations. I think it'll be on the higher end of difficulty to play though, because there's no reliable block or evade. You have to use your abilities to attack and dodge at the same time, but a skilled player should get a lot out of this. Now it's unclear whether its main stat will be strength or magic, or maybe like a hybrid mix, and the augments are unfortunately pretty unknown. We just know that you can get better movement speed during lifts, or extra gold from some rewards, and whatever athleticism turns out to be. Next up though, we have the Magic Archer, the vocation with an answer to, every situation. It's a mix of incredible offense and brilliant support, but it is limited by the intense stamina costs, and also it doesn't really have mobility. The Magic Archer is one that weaves magic into its bow to fire off magical arrows. These arrows can be manipulated to be a variety of elements, some even holy and healing for your allies, or just devastating to enemies. You've got classic options like frost to slow or lightning and fire, but they're changed with some pretty interesting effects thanks to your power. Take the Flame Fang arrow. It allows you to manually control the flight of a shot, which explodes on contact. Or there's the Hailstone Bolt, which generates a physical block of ice. The longer you charge the shot though, the bigger the block, and it can be great for smashing foes with blunt damage, even though you're a magic type. There's the Candescent Fire Orb that generates fire damage over time in a large area. You can stick it to walls or enemies. There's the Frostseeker Bolts that home in on targets, building up frost with a slow to maybe even become a stun. There's the hilarious Ricochet Arrows that bounce off walls and so on. So in tight environments, they'll bounce like crazy, dealing ridiculous burst. You can also charge those remedy arrows instead of healing to literally revive allies from range. Very helpful, no other vocation can really do that. So these and more are some of the unique effects the Magic Archer can use. But as an archer, you do need to aim the bow, either auto-aim quickfire shots that aren't so strong, or aim properly with R1 to track and even prep homing shots. This special aim mode will continue to add more and more arrows to home in on the target the longer you aim. Further, you can make this aiming mode either bigger or smaller, depending on whether you want to focus the DPS or AoE. Overall, I think the Magic Archer is going to be quite easy to play and understand. You've got arrows for every situation and interesting mechanics to each. The difficulty will come with the, big stamina cost of these effects, but also the fact that you have no special mobility, evade, counter, block, nothing like that. You are essentially a caster with a bow, so be aware. Having said all that though, I would expect the main stat to be magic for this one, and while the augments are mostly unknown, we know you can increase the defense of your pawns and recover stamina on kill, which is really quite good. Lastly, that brings us to the final vocation at the launch of the game, the Incredible Warfarer, which chooses not to be one vocation, but all of them at once. You can bring out any weapon, and the many different weapon skills attached. This is limited by having lower base stats, but this vocation can and must make the most of those incredible combos of the different playstyles. Where a caster might be most effective, then follow that up with an incredible stagger from the warrior, follow that up with an incredible weak point punish with like a thief. Maybe you need to quickly protect an ally by swapping to a fighter, or take down annoying flying enemies as an archer. All of that is incredibly an option, but with those lower base stats, you will need to truly understand all the vocations and the enemies to make the most of the right element, the right attack, the right combo. Now, unfortunately, the Warfarer is the last and least revealed vocation, so it's the one we have few details on. So the mechanics of this, the weapon skills, the core skills, what you actually can do, the extent of that, needs to be revealed in the full game. I suspect that the Warfarer will be one of the last, if not the last, hardest vocation to unlock. But I also imagine the Warfarer is going to be the hardest vocation to play for, well, obvious reasons. But with its incredible potential when played by a skilled Warfarer, I think it should be very impactful. But there you have it. That's my full overview of every vocation and all the main information to consider about all of them. I hope this helped you understand your options and maybe form a plan for what you're going to play, whether that's one vocation or many. Until next time though, I've been Hollow, you've been New, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.